Hi, this is Lori Johnson with Hancock Whitney Bank, and you're listening to Local Leaders, the podcast. Visit localleadersthepodcast.com for previous episodes or for information on appearing on the show.
Webster's defines an entrepreneur as one who organizes, manages, and assumes the risk of a business or enterprise. My guest today started out doing just that. After a trip to Greece, he became involved in his dad's small landscape business, eventually growing it into a multi-million-dollar organization, selling it, and then becoming involved in what became his passion, helping frustrated business owners gain traction in their business. If you're an entrepreneur, and most of you who watch my podcast are, especially if you're frustrated, maybe you are feeling like you're just spinning your wheels a little bit, you're going to want to pay attention to this two-part series. So before we go any further, I want to welcome Toby Massengal to Local Leaders Podcast.
Thank you, Jim.
I'm excited to have you here.
Yeah, man. It's excited to be here.
Absolutely.
Love your show. Love what you do here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Privilege.
It is a labor of love for me, as I say. And folks, in case you don't know, and obviously you wouldn't unless you were here, we have been working on this one for a little while. What you're about to hear and why it's a two-part series is literally, in my opinion, one of the top ways in which a frustrated business owner can move forward with a plan and a system.
Yes.
And that's really what all this is about. So it all started, and this is one of my favorite parts of your story. It all started with a trip to Greece, of all places, for you at a young age.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. Let's kind of lead in with that.
So I was 21. I was trying to make school work for the second time. I had taken a little break between, getting started in college after high school, because that's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
I took a little break to get a job. I had to earn money for tuition.
Yeah.
And was on my second time around trying to figure out what I wanted to do.
Sure.
And happened to meet a woman who wound up being my first wife, who had been to Greece the summer before. And boy, I had visions of adventure and conquering the world. Yeah. And I'd never been to Greece, and so we went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful place.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. I wound up settling in, found a job, running a little hotel right on the beach. And
man, that's cool. How old were you at that point?
I was 21.
21, man.
Yeah.
Golly. That must have been a blast.
It was. Looking back, too, I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, while you were there and you know, when you do those sorts of things, you want to do them when you're 21, not when you're necessarily 51. Although I know some 51-year-olds that would argue with me about that and say, do it at 21 and 51. Totally different experience.
Very different. Yeah.
But it was when you came back from that trip that maybe you felt like you wanted to get involved in your family business at that time, correct?
Yeah. You know, I don't want to lead anyone to believe that there was any ambition, right?
Yeah.
I got back. I had nothing to do. I had decided school really wasn't going to be an avenue for me. And my dad had started this small landscape business. He was formerly in road construction, and in the 80s, when lots of folks struggled, we wound up struggling as well. Sure. They had to shut that business down. And
the 80s were tough on that.
Yeah.
In construction.
That's right.
Sure.
Yeah. So he was doing the landscape business, and I just threw in to see if I could help him.
Yeah.
He needed help. And maybe to bide a little time until I figured out what my next move might be.
Sure. And so you jump in there. You jump in his landscape business, and I would imagine that you probably started noticing things that maybe could be more efficient, or issues with the business that you could help solve?
It was the humblest of beginnings. I don't know that either one of us really knew anything about horticulture.
Right.
But threw myself headlong into it, and really love the freedom and autonomy, and the feeling of being productive that having your own business can give you.
Yeah.
And over the time, in the early days, just really poured myself into learning the business.
Yeah.
And I guess, my mother and father had instilled in me and my brothers a passion for being excellent.
Yeah.
We played sports, and we were all very competitive. And so that natural drive to produce an excellent product kind of was right there all along as I was learning the trade.
Absolutely. And drive, to me, is one of the most important traits, if not the most important, for a business owner to have, because if you're not driven,
that's right,
you're really, really going to have a struggle moving ahead.
Yeah.
You've got to have something in you that always wants to improve, always wants to be better. That's something about when we talked about your story before we were recording this podcast that I picked up on right away, is you were someone that kind of seeks out knowledge. That is a derivative of drive. It's real easy to sit on the couch and watch Netflix all day, right?
Sure.
And be happy with where you're at. But when you're driven, you always feel like you've got to take advantage of time in the day. And especially as business owners, we can all relate to that. Now, family business is trucking along, and look, family business, y'all, and I can't speak for this from a personal perspective, but I worked for a company that was a family business. It's tough to run a family business when you've got sons and dads and things like that. You will see these multi-generational businesses from year, say, 1 to year 5, the success rate shrinks dramatically. From year 5 to year 10, it shrinks even more. By the time you get into, say, the 4th generation or 3rd generation, it's only like 5% of family businesses last into that 3rd and 4th generation.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So that speaks to you and your dad must have had a good relationship for the most part.
We did. Yeah. And I always looked to my father to learn. And he was one of these guys that kind of taught you how to do it by doing it himself.
Yeah.
Right. So in other words,
Sounds like
he never preached.
Yeah.
Right. Never came off acting like he knew better than me.
Yeah.
So there was always a mutual respect as well. Now, that's not to say we always got along. We bickered every day.
Yeah.
But it was always for the better and higher good of the business.
Right.
There did come a point in time where, I think having a business, when that business fails, it takes a lot out of you. And that was his experience with highway construction. So I don't think that he ever set out with this landscape venture with the ambition that I came along and brought to the operation.
Yeah. Do you remember, one quick question, and I'm very curious to know this. Do you remember the day when you decided, I think this is what I want to do?
I don't know that it was a day, but there was a period of time where I just got hooked with the game of building, growing, owning, having a business.
Yeah.
And I think that I always say, that was my problem in school, was just nothing jumping out at me, grabbing me, right?
Sure.
Driving me to want to know more. And so when I got started in the landscape business, and it just something, a light bulb went off.
Yeah.
A fire got started.
Wow.
And so it might have been something else.
Yeah.
later down the road, I don't know, other than landscaping.
Yeah.
But man, I fell in love with it, and I fell in love with being an entrepreneur, and then eventually fell in love with landscaping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you did fall in love with it. You fell in love with it so much, in fact, that you bought your father out of the business in the late 90s, I believe it was.
Yeah, it was. And I was pushing him a little harder than he wanted to be pushed, and he thought maybe there was something else he'd like to pursue. And so we decided, and I had been angling at wanting to have ownership. It was, we'll blame it on youth. Right?
Everything could be blamed on you.
It wasn't that I needed to buy him out because we weren't getting along. But I was maybe pushing him a little harder, and it was really a beautiful way to transition because he only stayed gone for a year.
Yeah.
And that was around the time that we picked up our first really big commercial project, and I needed him.
Yeah.
And he was ready to come back, and from that moment on, we had this wonderful partnership. He was my biggest cheerleader and was always there, always had my back. It was a good thing.
Very good. And that you mentioned that commercial project. Would that be the Mall of Louisiana?
It is.
Okay. And look, we want to spend a little bit of time on this because I put myself in the shoes of my guest a lot. And for those that may be outside of Louisiana listening to this, Mall of Louisiana is a gigantic mall here in Baton Rouge area. But when it first came around, it had a lot of fanfare with it, obviously. And you had your eye on it.
Yeah. In the landscape world, it was one of the biggest things to come along, maybe ever.
Yeah.
For a private commercial landscape company. And, I'd spent about, 5 or 6 years just learning the business, really honing what we did, developing a reputation. And so when the mall came along, I don't remember if I took a picture and put it on my refrigerator, but mentally I said that project's going to be ours. I'm going to do whatever it takes.
Did you believe that in your head?
I did.
Really?
I went out there every day and just short of making a nuisance of myself, got to know the contracting company that was installing the mall. They were a large outfit out of Greenville, South Carolina.
South Carolina, okay.
Yeah. And got to know that guy and ultimately wound up helping him kind of save the day. They had some labor issues towards the tail end of the installation of that project. So I really gave me the opportunity to cement my relationship with him and create a loyal fan and a good friend, actually. Yeah. And so, it was going to ultimately be their decision as to who was going to maintain it because they were under contract to maintain it for the first year.
Right.
So because of that, they got to select the
who
company.
Was going to follow up with that maintenance ongoing. And this was, huge. This is a huge, and before that, had you, was it primarily residential you were focused on?
We were in the commercial landscape space.
Yeah.
But we didn't have a project that I would call a flagship project that we could
hang your hat on and
fly our flag on. Yeah,
and that was your flag.
Matter of fact, I remember the shock and dismay for most of the folks that were in our industry, wondering how in the heck we were going to possibly be able to handle that project. And of course, that, as you know, when enough people say you can't do it, that's all you need to hear.
Yeah. And I love it that you in your mind had no doubt you were going to get that project. And that's really the first step, because if you don't believe you can do it, you're probably not going to do it. Though your own limitations are what you have in your mind.
That's right.
I truly believe that. And so it doesn't surprise me that you ended up with that job. And what it gave you, or what I can picture from that, is now you have a project that is a flagship project. And look, those things are like dominoes.
Yeah.
Then when another big project, oh yeah, I do Mall of Louisiana, in case you don't know.
That's right.
And so it lends legitimacy.
Exactly.
It's amazing what one project can do for your entire business. Especially when it's of that size.
Yeah. Because at the time, Town Center didn't exist. Steve Keller hadn't moved into our market.
Yeah.
Perkins Row wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
So I really feel like that the Mall of Louisiana, the scale and scope and impressiveness, kind of paved the way for these other developers to come in with these other projects, and I think we kind of earned our way to the front of the line for those.
Yeah, and it's also the one that you probably used as a learning tool. There were, I would imagine when you're bidding and then you get a job of that size, there's that first, I actually got the job. Now I've got to make sure I have the right amount of employees, and, jobs of that size. Sometimes, issues come with it, and all of those sorts of things. So the good part of that is when you bid that second big job, you learn a lot from that first big job. And that's really the beautiful thing about that whole process. And you make a name for your company. So you nail that job. How was it? Was it a challenging experience for you?
I was so passionate. I've been waiting so long for my moment. That if there were struggles, I don't remember them. It was just almost like when you imagine something and then it comes to be. There were no real surprises. At that point, I began looking for solutions for our labor situation. I had a dream that maybe there was a labor force out there that we could depend on to be consistent, that would be as passionate as I was about the work. And one of the other gifts that had been given to me when we were helping this landscape contract company install the mall was my first brush with working with the Hispanic community and their commitment and dedication to
work ethic.
To a hard day's work. That's right. And so I began solving certain problems that I knew we were going to have to solve if we were going to continue to grow. But the biggest part of solving a problem is identifying what that problem is. Right?
Huge part. If you don't know what the problem is, you can't fix what you don't know.
That's right.
Or you don't catch. And really, at the end of the day, that's what this entire podcast is all about, is how to recognize those things and then the solution to fix them. And we'll get into all that. But you were also someone that you seeked out knowledge. There were points in your business where, and you and I have talked about, you were a book reader. You weren't hesitant about checking out a book that you thought could help you in your business and give you some tips to succeed. And one of those books that you came across was a book called Traction. Tell me about that.
That's right. Well, I guess just to go back a little bit, as we began to grow, I think I was under the impression that all we had to do to be successful was deliver an excellent product, to be the best at what we did, which was landscaping. And I couldn't have been more wrong about that.
But that's what anybody would think.
Sure.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Sounds like it makes sense.
We delivered an excellent product, and as a result, we had success. We began to grow. And I guess there came a point in time where I realized that every day I was really solving more people problems and organizational problems than I was landscape problems.
Good way to put it.
And I had, spent 5 or 6 years learning the landscape business, I was ill prepared to be able to understand and solve the problems I was having building an organization. And so I began to search, look, read books. There's plenty out there on it. And I joined the CEO peer group called Vistage.
Yep.
Learned a tremendous amount there.
Very popular group.
To fill my head with that missing piece of how to build a successful organization.
Yeah. So you were in the game. I mean, you were willing, and I want to impress this to all the business owners out there, because I've been there. I'm sure Toby's been there. We've all been in that position where I have the answers kind of thing. As business owners, that's ingrained in us. We're just a different breed, and we want to solve all the problems and have all the answers. And I had a business owner sit across from me, probably one of the best bits of advice I've ever gotten on this show was I asked this particular business owner, what is one piece of advice you could give that totally transform your business? And he said, figure out what you're not good at and then pay someone to do it. As business owners, we don't want to admit we're not good at everything.
That's right.
And so kudos to you for being able to have the humility to say, I don't have the answer here. I need to at least go search for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were a little bit frustrated, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe a little bit unlike the pathway of learning the landscape business. With an organization, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And in all of the experience, the books that I read, the consultants I hired, the approach was to kind of fix the organization one piece at a time.
Right.
And so that was my mindset, and that had served me well when I was learning all about landscaping.
Sure.
You fix a piece here, and then you roll on down the road, and then another challenge comes up, and you got to fix that, and you wind up building a program and a system, right?
Yep.
I had a little bit more time at the time. I didn't have an organization of 85 folks that I was trying to get rowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We say that entrepreneurs deal on a daily basis simultaneously with about 136 issues in their head.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look, it wouldn't surprise me. I definitely got at least 135 of them.
And so that was the mindset, is a fix it one piece at a time. And so even when I read Traction, that was where my head was at, and I really missed the thrust, the main point of what Traction really was trying to teach me.
Yeah.
And that was that it was the answer to that 136 issues simultaneously problem is strengthening 6 key components of your business, and it's strengthening all 6.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And so what Traction and EOS
and that
really
was the difference. Not to interrupt you, but that was the difference between what you were already focused on, which was one thing at a time. Mm-hmm. That's a big difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and if you think about as a comparison to software, any software that you use runs on the platform of an operating system.
Sure.
And those operating systems don't mix and combine. You've got iOS, and then you've got Microsoft with whatever they call their operating system. Yeah. And it serves, like I say, as a platform to serve up solutions. You can put anything on top of that platform to run it, but
sure,
you can only have one platform, one operating system. And that's the real, I think, key to EOS that they don't teach in school.
Yeah.
I've got MBA buddies who graduated and they'd never heard of the concepts and the principles, and the idea of having an operating system, one operating system for your business.
Well, let me tell you, I'm familiar with the operating system now, and it's genius. It is genius in its simplicity.
Truly,
if that makes sense. Nick Saban, who I know we're from Louisiana and we're supposed to hate him, but y'all, he's a good coach. Nick Saban said it best for me, and that was one thing he always preached was he had a system in coaching, and he would tell his recruits, you buy into the system and the system will work. You buy into the system and we will win. And that system was a process. It was just a process and a manner of doing things. But he knew it worked because he won all the time, right?
Yeah, he had a track record for sure.
It can cross over to any part of life, business included. You have to have a system. You can't just go willy-nilly through your business and expect these amazing results. Will you get lucky sometimes? Yeah, you might fall into a job that you didn't expect to get, or you know, someone may need your product or service and they just come to you. But without a system, there's all these other problems in the background that you're not dealing with.
That's right.
And they will frustrate you to the point of, I hate to say pulling your hair out because I don't have any, but Toby has great hair. Pulling Toby's hair out, it'll frustrate him. So systems are very important, and we're definitely going to lead into that and spend the majority and the vast time throughout this series discussing it. I promise you, I can't hammer this down enough. It is absolutely worth the listen. You will learn something from it that you're not going to learn anywhere else. I want to say that. Now, you read that book and you just said, you know, I missed something there.
Yeah.
Eventually you end up selling your business. Kind of lead us into that.
Yeah. So I, you know, the whole, I guess, beginning of my search to figure out how to build a great organization. Yeah. I tried doing it one piece at a time. And, you know, I liken it to, there's an old Indian parable about blind guys trying to figure out what an elephant is for the first time. And they all kind of have their one piece of the elephant that they're feeling and touching that's right in front of them. And that is what they describe as, you know, the solution.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they don't take the whole elephant into consideration.
Right.
And so that's kind of, you know, how we got on down the road, trying to fix it one piece at a time. And I became increasingly frustrated.
Sure.
And I was dragging the organization, kicking and screaming, and it was, you know, all on me.
Yeah.
I have to say.
Yeah.
We had good people. Were they all the right people? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But I just, it was a piece that I never really felt like I got figured out. And so when a competitor came along and offered to buy my business, I was frustrated. 2016 had just happened.
Yeah. For those of you maybe not from this area, that was a flood in which really the entire city of Denham Springs, most of Livingston Parish, Louisiana, and part of East Baton Rouge Parish completely went underwater. And we're not talking inches, we're talking feet.
Yeah.
It was devastating. So you got that on top of
all of our
business.
Equipment, trucks, offices went underwater.
Yeah.
That was a killer. I experienced a death in the family. So, you know, that combined with the frustrations that I was experiencing with the business and this offer out there of a competitor, yeah, I won't say that I had achieved this pinnacle and was looking to sell. I was frustrated and didn't know when another offer like that would come along. And so a little bit frustrated, just threw in the towel.
Yeah. And how was business at that point?
Business was great.
Business was great.
Yeah.
So you're not selling
We were successful.
Yes, and that's
By
what I
all
wanted
accounts.
to point out and get to. You were not in a situation where your business was failing, you owed all this debt, and you're just like, man, I need to sell this thing just so I can get this debt paid off. I mean, business was fine for you, but you were so frustrated that even with a fledgling business, you didn't want to have to deal with that anymore. You were so frustrated that you had a good offer on the table, maybe.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know how much longer I could do it and
Yeah.
maintain the level of success we had. So it was this decision I made at the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Tough decision.
Yeah. Yes and no. You know, when you're tired and somebody says you can stop running if you want to,
Yeah.
I don't know how hard that
that's
decision
a good point.
is.
Yeah,
Right?
I love that analogy.
And you know, it took me probably 5 years before I was rested and recovered well enough to really start getting that itch again.
Yeah.
And wanting to feel and be productive. And
Yeah.
interestingly enough, in that time, the Vistage group that I had been a part of, and we had all grown really close.
Sure.
They decided to disband as a Vistage group,
Yeah.
Vistage organization, but continued to meet on a regular basis once a month.
Yeah.
And
Well, at that point, they're so tight. It's like friends. getting
Exactly.
together. It's, you know.
And we maintain
Catching
they maintain some semblance of, talking about business, what's going on business-wise, what's going on personal-wise. And so, obviously, when I sold my business, I had to get out of Vistage because I wasn't a CEO anymore.
Right.
And so when they broke up, I was able to, it was okay to come back.
Yeah.
Right. And it was great, being part of that again. But interestingly enough, the Vistage chair, Malcolm Brignac, had, after Vistage broke up, decided to become what they call an EOS implementer,
Yeah.
which is not a consultant,
Right.
He's a guy that comes in and implements EOS in a business,
The actual system.
the actual system.
Yeah.
And one by one, all the guys sitting at the table that were part of that Vistage group, they began to hire him to implement EOS. And, you have to remember, we were together for 5 or 6 years as a Vistage group, and we heard speaker after speaker come in every month and sell, whatever it was they were consulting on.
Sure.
A solution that your business needed.
Yeah.
It was that one piece at a time.
Right.
Nobody in the group ever sort of broke through,
Right.
figured it out.
Yeah.
We all continued to try to figure it out while we were in Vistage. Once they began implementing EOS, they all said unanimously and enthusiastically, this is what we were looking for all along.
The whole time.
Changed their life, changed their business. And that was very, very powerful for me to see.
Yeah. I can imagine. And, I can't hammer this point down enough. It seems like you were handling one problem at a time.
Yeah.
And the issue for me, hearing that from you, and what I can imagine is you're solving a problem, but there's all these other problems that spring up. So when you're doing it one at a time, you're never getting any traction.
Right.
You are stuck in the mud because once you solve the payroll problem, you've got the employee problem. And once you solve the employee problem over here, you've got maybe some other sort of product problem. So it's
All
really
while
like you
trying to run
never
your
get
business.
anywhere. Yeah. You never
Yeah.
get anywhere.
That's
That's
at the
frustrating.
same time, the bullets are whizzing by your head. You're trying to dodge those and figure this thing out. And I always love to liken it to the fact that Eskimos have 30 words for snow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So imagine figuring out one type of snow here.
Right.
And then you got that done. But then the next thing you know, there's another type of snow thrown at you that you need to deal with. And so language and experience kind of builds that knowledge base over time.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what EOS is. It tells you all of those problems that you have in your business that you're dealing with on a daily basis. There's 6 key components that have to be strong. And if you strengthen those 6 key components, you'll have a great organization.
Period. And here's the great thing about that, and what I love most about it, as you know, say a customer, when I look at that, it's not overwhelming to me. You're not giving me a system and saying, here's 100 things that you need to learn. And believe me, they're out there.
Sure.
There are some systems, I'm sure, out there that are, you've got to do 50 different things in order to get your organization. This is not overwhelming. It's 6 key components. And when we go over those components with you, number one, it's going to make complete sense. Number 2, it's probably steps in your organization that maybe you have pieces of that you're doing, but not all of them. And some of them you may have them, such as a mission statement, but you haven't put a whole lot of thought into, it's low hanging fruit. It's the basic mission statement. We want to do right by our customers and with pride, that sort of thing. But what does that mean is what you drill down in EOS with. What does that mean, and do the other people in your organization share your leadership?
That's right.
Share that philosophy. That is a killer if they don't. And we're going to get into all that, y'all. But before
one thing to note too is, when Gino Wickman was putting the system together, it's not concepts that you've never heard of before.
No.
These are concepts that have been around 100 years. They're going to be around 1,000 more. What he recognized was the interconnectedness of those. And he developed a few simple tools to help actually make those concepts live in your organization every day.
Yes.
And that's really the brilliance. And you're right, it's simple. Now,
there's brilliance in simplicity, though.
Yes, it's simple. It's not necessarily easy.
No.
But then again, having your own business and being successful isn't easy. If it was, everybody would do it.
Everybody would do it, and there'd be a much higher success rate in business if it were easy. It's not easy. Your competition alone will keep us as business owners on our toes constantly. But this system that we're going to get into is going to be a business changer for you if you are frustrated. I promise you that. And the great thing about this podcast is we talk about different things. We're going to pop them up. You'll see them pop up actually on the screen as we're discussing them. So you'll have a visual there of what we're talking about. So you discussed that 5 years and that 5-year period where you were, let's call it decompressing from all of this. And eventually you said, you know what, I want to get back in the game. Your peer group, there's a guy there. He was an implementer, as you said. And you wanted to learn more about it, I would imagine. And you had already read the book.
Yeah.
So you were somewhat familiar with what this guy was doing and what he was talking about.
Yeah. I think that really the deciding factor, because I was looking, I was trying to figure out what my next move might be. My non-compete had expired, so I could have gone back into the landscape business, which was all I really kind of knew how to do.
Yeah.
I might say. wasn't super thrilled about that. I guess I had been there and I had done that, and maybe the entrepreneur in me wanted to do something a little bit different.
Challenging.
I was in a different phase of my life. So, I began thinking about what I could do to help folks, to make an impact, a lasting difference.
Impact. One of the key words in my podcast, I have words that are, matter of fact, that word is on one of my t-shirts that I have, impact. It's a very strong word.
Sure.
And we want to make an impact, and that's what you wanted to do. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But when I hear that word, I always.
No, I'm glad you did. Yeah. It's part of, why I love what you do here.
Yeah.
So, and then right before my eyes there was, my buddy Malcolm, who had made an impact on friends of mine who were in the same boat I was, in a way that excited me.
Yeah.
And so I can't say that I ever saw myself standing in front of a group, helping them to build a better business. But man, that just really got its hooks in me.
Absolutely.
And often running I was. So yeah.
Very good. And so we're going to get in now to what you do now. You are now an implementer.
Yeah, I became an implementer.
EOS. And so I want to give, before we get into the actual system, I want people to be able to grasp exactly what it is that you do from a bird's eye perspective. So just like from 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
What is an implementer at EOS?
An implementer at EOS is somebody that comes in. There's a Kurt Goodall, a mathematician, said it's impossible to be in a system and stand on the outside looking at that system at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's not that you can't implement EOS in your business yourself, and they call that self-implementing. It's just difficult.
Right.
To be on the outside of your business, working on the business in the way that you need to, and being in the business at the same time. So an implementer comes in, and through a series of full-day sessions, we help entrepreneurs implement EOS in their organizations, showing them what right looks like, using a series of exercises, helping them learn how to use the tools. It's typically a 2-year process, which is the other cool thing. I think on some level, sometimes consultants will perpetuate their own existence.
Sure.
They want to get in a business, develop a relationship with a client, and have that client forever.
Yeah.
The intent with EOS is to step into an organization, help them to implement the system. Usually takes about 2 years.
Yeah.
Before we graduate them.
Yeah.
Graduating is not a requirement. Some clients, keep us forever.
Yeah.
But the intent is a process that takes about 2 years to implement this system.
Yeah. I mean, the goal there for you is I want you to have the system and have such a grasp of the system that you can do it without me if you need to. And that's really the goal. But if you're, some business owners and CEOs of companies, they're like, no, I don't want you going anywhere.
Yeah.
I'll keep you here as long as you're willing to stay,
right.
because you do save a lot of time for them, and you are a master of the system. There's no doubt about it.
Yes.
So we're gonna take some time here to tell y'all the reason that we're doing a series on this is that there's absolutely no way you could obviously cover this in an hour. We're already 45 minutes in, and we're just now getting to the point where we discuss it. So we're going to give you kind of one of those 6 components today. And then when you come back next week, you're going to get the full repertoire, as it were. Where would you start with that? Maybe with vision, or?
Well, I would say at a very high level, EOS does three things for an organization.
Yeah.
The first is gets everybody on the same page, rowing in the same direction with what we call vision.
Yeah.
Number two, it creates traction around that vision by instilling discipline and accountability in the organization, so that everywhere you go, you see folks doing their part in helping to achieve that vision.
Right.
The third thing it does is we create a healthy leadership team where folks can be open and honest with one another. They actually enjoy working together, because a lot of times that's not the case.
Right.
And I'm not saying there's not healthy conflict,
Right.
but the system teaches folks how to have that healthy conflict in an open and honest environment, so
Yeah.
that everybody's clean in the end and ready to go to work.
Right.
So
Yes.
those three things are really the foundation, the starting point
Yeah.
for what EOS does.
So let's talk about those 6 components.
Yeah, sure. So 6 key components that Gino figured out that need to be strong in an organization in order to have a great organization, and it starts with vision.
Yeah.
Every business should. And vision is just about getting everybody rowing in the same direction, on the same page.
Absolutely. It's like what I just talked about when you're running your business willy-nilly and you don't know where you're going from one day to the next. You don't know what are your goals, where you want to be in 3 months, much less 6 months, much less a year.
Yeah.
You
That's
have
right.
a lack of vision.
And don't get me wrong, the founder or the owner usually does.
Yeah.
But the key there, remember, we're trying to build a great organization, so everybody needs to be on the same page with what that vision is and how you're going to achieve it.
Good
and
point.
so that's what we accomplish with the vision component. The second key component is every great vision has great people that work hard to achieve that vision. Jim Collins coined a phrase, right people on the bus, wrong people off the bus.
Yeah.
But it takes both. It takes having the right people who believe in your mission statement, believe in your core values. And then you want those folks sitting in the right seat where what they love to do and are best at, they get to do every day.
Right.
So we help get that right. With the data component, the third key component, in a busy day, you wind up making too many decisions based on ego, emotion, whether or not you're having a great day that day.
Right.
So with a data component, it's a weekly scorecard so that you can keep a pulse of your business, be able to see things when they get off track before it's too late.
Yeah.
Before you're looking in the rearview mirror. So there's a data component. When all those, when those three things began to get really clear in the organization, your organization develops a certain level of transparency, right? So all the problems, the inefficiencies, the issues, and even the opportunities begin to bubble up. They become very easy to spot, and so we teach organizations how to address those issues.
Right. Yeah.
Every great organization has to get really good at teeing their issues up as they arise and making them go away in such a way that they stay gone forever.
Yeah.
So that's the fourth key component, the issues component.
Right.
And then with the fifth component, the process component, there are 6 to 10 things, a handful of core processes in every business.
Yeah.
And you just want to make sure that those processes get done the right and best way every time.
Sure.
So we help organizations to develop processes and systems around those handful of things that need to get done the right and best way.
Right.
That's the process component. And then the last key component is the traction component, and that's really where the rubber meets the road. We put vision at the top of the model and traction at the bottom of the model, and that's not by mistake, because traction is bringing that vision down to the ground and helping organizations to execute on that vision
Yeah.
with discipline and accountability. Look, when visions aren't realized in an organization, 9 out of 10 times, it's because they fail to get traction around that vision.
Very good.
And so that's the 6 key component.
That is the 6 key components. Now, next week, we're going to go through these in much more detail. We're going to talk about rocks, but not the kind of rocks you think we're going to talk about. We'll get into that and so much more with Toby Massengal. For so many people, you've helped a lot of people. There's a lot more you can help that are going to need your help. And it all starts with this EOS. Come back next week, y'all. That's all I can tell you. That's really all I can tell you.
The best is yet to come.
The best is yet to come, and it will be absolutely, if you're a business owner, a pivotal moment for you and your business to take an hour next week and listen to the follow-up episode in this 2-part series. But look, Toby, you did pretty good behind a microphone here.
Oh, thank you, Jim. I had a good coach.
You did. There you go. I love it. And we appreciate you coming by, sharing this with us.
Yeah, man. It was a pleasure.
Folks, if you have any questions in the meantime, just shoot me a message and I'll be glad to ask it in the follow-up podcast with Toby. I'm going to link the book that we talked about today in the description of this video. So if you're interested in checking that book out, I'll link it through Amazon or whatever. And I'm going to link the website for EOS in there as well. So you'll have that, and just no cheat. Don't get too far ahead. We don't want to blow your mind before we get a chance to tell you about all the great things with each of these 6 key components to solving all your business frustrations, I'd say.
Yeah. I like to say that EOS doesn't solve one problem in your organization. It solves all of them.
There you go. And so that's a good place to kind of wrap this up. Thank you so much for your support of what we do here on Local Leaders, the podcast, closing in on 1 million downloads on
Wow.
YouTube. Unbelievable. I know, man.
Amazing,
I
man.
say that every time I see that number.
It's impressive.
It's just crazy, mind-boggling. But it's guests like you. I sit behind here every week. People get enough of seeing me, but it's guests like you that come on that these people want to see and want to learn from. So until next time, I'm Jim Chapman, reminding you, love your community, support local business, and keep leading. Thank you very much.